Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, May 16th at 8:32 a.m. We're here for the second session of fire union negotiations. Lisa, do you want us to introduce ourselves again, or are you good? All right. So the city would like to retract 3 of our proposals and put revisions in their place based on questions asked by the union last week, just so hopefully we can clear up a few of those items. The first one is going to be the big section on the handbook, and you specifically asked for clarification of at-fault vehicles. We added that. I added line numbers to the document. It's lines 57 through 61. Any questions on that?
Nope.
The next revision we have is to city proposal original 17, the limited duty. Based on our conversations, I added a note at the bottom just as a note. This says the city tracks FMLA on a calendar year. And then I added the section in gray that says light duty can be utilized up to the following in a calendar year. So that clarification is built in and there's no vagueness there. Last one, we're going to retract proposal 19 in its place. We added one line, and there will be 2 sheets here for you to look at. This is the medical coverage program. We added a line that says copy of the legislation. Funds for gender transition. Perfect. Are we good now? Go ahead. All right. Item 188901 says we can't use public funds for gender transition procedures. I'm not familiar with your whole medical plan detail, so we just need to add the language that your plan cannot cover that. It's hard enough to read my own. I don't want to read your guys's too. It's like 800 pages of boredom.
This is, you said, not a law yet?
In July 1st.
It's
Oh, it
passed,
will be.
but
Yes.
it will become effective
It's
July 1.
been signed.
Gotcha.
And that's what you have before you is the tracking of the legislature and the signature from there.
Gotcha, okay.
And then how would you guys like to proceed with this one?
presentation for us?
We do. Before we venture into new territory, I'd like to revisit anything we have on the table, and we do have one counter.
Okay. If you want to present that to us.
So our counter is, I'm calling it City Counter 1 to your counter on the bilingual program. So we added the language in gray.
You guys want to talk about this one later? We're going to talk about this one.
I'm happy to talk about any of them.
We'll take it back when we caucus and we'll talk about it. And
Okay.
we currently don't have anything for you at this time.
Did you have a chance to review any of the currently outstanding 22 proposals on the table?
We are still in process with a lot of it.
My only concern is once we move into pay, everything else gets sidelined, and these other items are important as well. So I'm a little concerned that we're overlooking things that are important to the city to get to kind of the shiny golden star.
We understand that, and we have some still that we're working through. And,
Oh, come on, I only
and we
handed you
will-
like 120 pages of reading.
And we have plans for most of them, so.
So I'm going to propose pay a little differently than we have in the past. And I'm not handing anything out, and I'm going to talk a lot. And then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to talk a lot more. So the presentation is built into separate sections because we're tackling more than just pay. Please stop me at any time you have questions. That's why we're going to have a dialogue on this rather than hand over paper and I just read it to you. In the beginning. All right, so this is the PowerPoint presentation covering the city's proposal for firefighting personnel only. We're not talking any of your civilian staff. This would address compensation, your ad pays, and your overall rank structure. That's a lot more than we normally talk about. So again, please keep an open mind. So this is the current structure to the department. We have 3 classes of firefighters, driver operators, the paramedic, which is an assignment. We have the captain, the day's captain, which is an assignment, and the battalion chief. So I'm not doing anything with your head count totals, but I am going to shuffle where they are placed. This is currently what makes up compensation for firefighters in the department. You have your base wage, longevity, paramedic pay, working out of class, airport rescue firefighting, clothing allowance, holiday pay, and day's captain. And I've been losing my voice all week because it could be really rough by the end of this. Currently in the CBA, we look at biweekly, which are the columns with the orange arrow. I've added hourly and annual because numbers I'm presenting later on, I'm not presenting biweeklies, I'm presenting hourly. So you can do a carrot to carrot. Next, we have longevity. I've just included the table. I added the annual amount in this case, and then I included the article, which is Article 10, Section A. Paramedic pay is covered in Article 10, Section B, and it's also listed as biweekly, and we've added it annual. Extra duty are covered in Section D for day captain, F for ARF, and A for working out of class. So these are all items we're going to be addressing in our presentation. So our proposed changes are a lot. So what we're doing now is not bad. Our structure is not wrong. Our practices are good. What the city is looking to do is to move to something a little more modern and a slightly more aggressive pay scale than what we employ with longevity. It takes 25 years to max on longevity. 0.5% is not a sustainable raise. It's just not. Part of the changes we're asking for, they are administrative because it makes it more streamlined and transparent. These changes do not affect your wages and benefits, but things might look a little different. The majority of these changes, like almost all of them, are a package deal. We know you might be annoyed by some of these, and that is not our intent, and I'm really sorry if you're offended by anything we put up and we talk about, but we are looking at a total overhaul. So right now we have a kitchen. I haven't remodeled the kitchen. I hauled it outside, lit it on fire, and I built a new one. So there's going to be no real way to have an easy comparison between now and what we're proposing. So the presentation is very long explaining to you how I built it. So you're going to be just like, my God, woman, I don't want to see any more calculations, but I've included them all. So when you go back and you look at them later, you understand how I built it. Ask as many questions as you want. Trust me, I gave this to council. You cannot have more questions than they did. And then the important thing to understand is every firefighter will make more money on this scale. So the first thing we'd like to address is the modern pay approach. We'd like to convert from a bi-weekly to an hourly rate of pay. That's administrative for us because the payroll system does not like bi-weekly calculations. The system is not set up to operate that way. We would like to move away from longevity, and that means moving to a step and grade table. At the very end of this very long presentation, I will show you the table, but I'm going to first show you how I got there. And lastly, we did a placement of all active duty staff onto the new table based on the salary projection file. So the salary projection file is as of 10/1. You've had people switch. The information I have is a snapshot in time, but everyone has fiscal year 25 longevity, paramedic pay, rank advancements. All of those things were considered for placement. Next up is an updated rank and overall structure. This is the part I think you're going to be kind of offended by, and that is not the intent. It's just kind of a reshuffling of everything. So we would like to eliminate the probationary firefighter and second-class firefighter pay grades. They're the same position as a firefighter, it's just their knowledge base is a lot less. We can handle those advancements through steps without having to change their pay grades, which is a very administratively cumbersome process and it's hard for budgeting. Next up, we'd like to rename the driver operator to engineer. We'd like to add a paramedic stipend grade to all levels of active firefighter ranks. We'd like to expand language on the paramedic function, qualifications, and how pay is calculated based on moving to a stipend model. And lastly, we would like to add a lieutenant rank. This would be 3 existing headcount converted over as paramedic clinical experts. Because we wouldn't have assigned paramedics, we have the stipend. We would like a lieutenant who's kind of an expert, the clinical side, on each platoon. Sorry, I'm still going. We would like to eliminate the day's captain position when vacated. See, I've learned, when vacated, I got those special words in there. We would like to move to a fire marshal as a separate rank and promotional process. The reason is it's currently a captain and it is a high-level position, but it has very different duties than what a captain working on the active fire service are. So we would like to make sure that we have very clean job descriptions and promotional processes around those. We would like to put in a lateral transfer rule only for the fire marshal position if an internal search fails. This is one of our harder to fill positions in the department. It's moved back and forth between civilian and firefighter. The new position would be a fire marshal. It would remain a rule of 80, and it would have to be able to respond as an emergency responder in the fire service. So it cannot be civilian. Lastly, we would like to update all the firefighter job descriptions. I have a draft of those, but I won't be able to bring those till next week. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. We have done a small overhaul of content and a massive overhaul of visual, so you will see those. Lastly, we're looking to consolidate ad pays into base wage. We would eliminate all of the WOOK and build it into the position in which the WOOK is being earned. We would eliminate ARF as a standalone ad pay, and I'll show you how that would work when I show you the tentative part of the scale. The special days captain 9.2% would be rolled into base. And the captain pay, now this one is a little, I need to say it right. Right now, as a captain, to step up to BC, you actually have the title of BC for that day, right? Like you're paid as a BC. Basically, we're building a WOOK into the captain base pay, and then that step up and title shift would not occur. It would handle like all of our other WOOKs. I'm using WOOK as a reference, and then I'm trying to eliminate it, so go figure. So under our proposals, your pay would come down to these 3 items. It's no longer 8, it would be calculated off of 3. Any questions so far? Because it's kind of unnerving.
Were you going to cover the working out of class more for the?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is the proposed rank structure we have for the department. The arrows that are in color are the ranks. The arrows that are in black are pay grades. So we would have 2 pay grades for firefighter, 1 job description. 1 is a firefighter, 1 is a firefighter with the paramedic stipend, 2 different pay grades, 2 different rates of pay. Now, engineer and captain look very long because my understanding is both of those positions work out at the airport when needed. When you would be assigned to the airport, you would log in paramedic ARF or just your engineer ARF, so you get that extra 50 cents an hour. But when you look at your timesheet, you would see, oh, it's a different rate of pay because I had a different assignment that day. Everyone okay so far? No one's thrown anything? I know I'm talking about things that have been long-standing tradition, and I'm trying to tread very carefully, but to make some of these changes, there needs to be kind of an upheaval. So I will deliver the upheaval.
So the firefighter, engineer, all the ones that have with paramedic, that's, if you have your paramedic, you get that wage all the time.
Accurately, yes.
But the ARF is only when you're working at the ARF station.
Perfect. All right.
I have a question, and there's no cap to the amount of people that can be qualified as a paramedic?
It would be to the amount we have the capability to train people. So this is just, I'm sorry, my spreadsheets tend to be very colorful. I sit in an office with no windows all day, so this is my version of entertaining. So I have 5 questions I know you have right now, and I'm going to go through them. So I'm going to pop the questions up, and then I'm going to do my best to answer them. So why did you eliminate our probationary and second-class firefighters? Why did you rename the driver operator? Why did you add a lieutenant? I briefly touched on that. Why do we have a fire marshal and the days captain listed? And why are you consolidating ad pays, specifically WOOK, into base wage? So we eliminated the second and probationary firefighter and renamed first class for onboarding and budgeting. You hire somebody, they're a firefighter. Their skills will advance as they go through the years as the position. Their title doesn't necessarily need to change to reflect that. They still have a lot of the same duties. While their knowledge base is much lower, they still are coming up through the knowledge. It's still a firefighting position. Next, we changed the name from driver operator to engineer for 2 reasons. Sometimes it's easier to look at something this different if it actually looks different. So that's just part of it. Also, driver operator doesn't sound like a technical position, whereas engineer is a technical position, and the driver operator has a lot of technical duties working on the fire truck. When I originally started giving this presentation to council, they're all like, oh, a driver operator, is that like a probationary person? No. Like, no, that's a ranked person. It's a better reflection from our viewpoint of what the position does. This is not a hill we're dying on. This is one of my suggestions. The lieutenant, this is put in place to help the battalion chiefs. So we have 3 battalion chiefs, 1 on each platoon. That's a lot of people. Where we are expanding the ability to have paramedic people, we need to make sure we're having a way to train, track, and give clinical expertise to newer paramedics or to review situations. In this case, the lieutenant it would be an individual contributor. You might consider it a lead in the field, but it will not manage people. That remains with the captain. This position will help the battalion chiefs and the division chief of training with training, certifications, promotional processes, that sort of thing. Now, when the current day's captain leaves the assignment, we would eliminate that pay grade. Figuring out where to place the fire marshal was a nightmare. So what we did is we took the annual wage of the engineer and the captain, the annual wage, increased that by 2%, divided it by 2, and then divided that by 2080 to get back into the hourly rate of pay for the fire marshal. Because of the specialized nature, it is a firefighting position, but it is a little bit more on the administration side. We would like the lateral transfer option in only if the internal search fails. By search, that means we would have a full promotional process. If no one goes through that process, we would have to look outside when we have a vacancy. Working out of class. I know this is going to be a sticky one. So working out of class is cumbersome, to say the least, on the administration side. You're taking the percentage of a pay, not the positions, and then you have to calculate it in. It's also not transparent when we talk about what people make. So based on the achievement level, it looks like it's pretty much 100% achieved at certain time thresholds. Like when I go through the projection file, everyone at this rank has achieved it. So it's not really a stretch goal, it's an expectation of the position. Because of that, we would like to roll it in. Additionally, when we sit in negotiations and we start talking about pay increases, if you say 3% to the table, it's not 3% to the table. We have to go back and backwards calculate it into those 8 ad pays to figure out what the 3% really costs. Basically, we can juggle 3 balls very successfully. Juggling 8 is very difficult. And that's where we run into errors with pay and issues with budget. This is one of those items that is part of the package deal. Okay, so far? I know I'm throwing a lot at you very fast. So you haven't been on a step and grade table, so I'm going to briefly take you through a step and grade table. The width of the table itself, that's your earnings potential per pay grade, is called pay grade span. The city is proposing 12 steps, a step per year. We aim for 20 to 30% wide of earnings within that rank. We do this for scales that have rank. So you guys have a rank structure, so 20 to 30% is what we aim for. The city scale, for example, is 40% wide because there's no job growth. It's just a position. There's not a senior HR consultant, there's just an HR consultant. Now, movement along that table through that grade span is what we're calling steps. Starting with fiscal year 26, we are proposing to give fiscal steps at fiscal year. That's the first pay period of each fiscal year. That includes employees in their introductory or probationary periods, whatever we call it. The reason is they're still doing the job. If they're not doing the job well, they'll be managed up into the expectation we need, or they'll be managed down, which means either out or demoted. We don't do mid-year steps. Everything clicks on fiscal year. You get hired August 1st, you're getting a step October 1st. You get hired November 1st, you get a step October 1st. Everyone's the same. Now, promotions. Right now it's pretty clean because you guys don't have steps. You just move up. Now we would apply 5% to the wage you're currently at and move you up to the new pay grade. We would then place you at the step that guaranteed the 5%. So it could be 7%, it could be 8%, but it will be a minimum of 5. The percentage between steps is not uniform, and I will go through how that calculation is built as well. Now, the percentages of pay between ranks is also not uniform. I build most tables that way, and it lent itself well to your current structure. I kind of toyed with some of the numbers there, but it is pretty similar. There is some deviation. You will not make less by giving up longevity. It takes 25 years. The city's proposal is 12 steps. That's 12 years, and it's way more money. So that's like the best piece of news I've given you so far. We can define a step being given in the CBA. Right now, for general employees, we are not guaranteed a step unless council grants one. The police union is guaranteed a step for their officers because it is written into the CBA. We are recommending your language mimic that. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking like a real nerd, so bear with me. So in building the table, we started with the new firefighter rank, but I had to figure out where to start that rank. So currently the probationary firefighter, I took the biweekly current times 26 pay periods to get the annual wage of $46,000. I divided that by your 2912 schedule, and that's $16.05 as a starting wage. I then eliminated those two pay grades that we currently have. So then I had to roll the, let's see, firefighter qualified to work on ambulance, which is 0.41% of this pay grade's base. So I included that. 1605 times the 0.41 took me to 1612. I then increased that by 7.5% to make hiring more competitive. That takes us to the 1732. There's my Excel formula minus, oh, I took the dollar signs out because when I put it back in Excel, I didn't like that. So I didn't expand the table. Like I didn't increase the table by 7.5%. I took that percentage between the probationary and the first class firefighter is about 15%, and I split that, part of it at step 1 and part of it at step 2. So the table didn't go up, I just redistributed that money. So step 2 is also a nightmare calculation. It's 7.5% over step 1, plus the firefighter qualified to step up to driver operator, which is the 2.24% of the driver operator salary. That is the number I pulled out of salary projections. Christy and I came up with different numbers. I went with the one in the system. So there's my Excel formula minus the dollar signs and commas. Step 3, thankfully, is 3%. No more complicated calculations. It's just a simple percentage that rolled. Now, steps 3 through 12 are not all at 3%. I just want to set that expectation right now. They are at varying percentages. Everyone okay so far? I know this is a lot. Now, I had to add the paramedic stipend function within this new pay grade. So we added a firefighter with paramedic. That's going to be on this table an FF2. It's 2912. It is 17% higher than the firefighter position. So I took 17% of step 1, and that is how we created step 1 of this rank, this pay grade. Now, it's highest at the firefighter level. The paramedic stipend will decrease as you move up in rank. So I think it's 17, 10, 4, and 2%. Now, all current firefighter paramedics, that's your 22F currently, were slotted into this new firefighter with paramedic pay grade. Okay so far? Now, the complicated calculation we just walked through for step 1 and step 2 is only existing for us to create the table. Once we get the table set and it goes in the CBA, that's converting to a simple function, simple percentage. So I'm taking the 1388.66 divided by 2912 into the 48 cents, and then I'm adding that, and then I'm going to get rid of, it is a separate calculation, moving the 1732 times 110.25. That's the 48 cents to get the difference between the 7.5 to the 1910. So it's converting that long formula into one percentage, and going forward, that's what we will see in the table. It will only exist historically in the CBA to show how we made the calculation and for the purposes of me explaining the table. It'll make a little bit more sense as I show you through the ranks. So this is actually accurate. I had to do this slide like 7 times. Every time I tweaked the table, it messed up all my numbers. No one will make less than 25 than they are expected to make if we did nothing to the table this year and we rolled all of those ad pays we talked about. We did take into account the rank advancements. So there are some very wide variations of increased earnings when you look at your employees, because you did have people moving through that probationary to, well, it's the second to first and the probationary to second. Everyone was placed at the step closest to their current wage without a decrease. Longevity, as the scale, has nothing to do with the new table. So I just kicked that whole idea right outside. All I took is what you will be earning for longevity for the placement. So placement on the table ranged from $3.05 to $9,223. That's an average of $1,200 per person. The overall cost placement has shifted because I made some tweaks this morning. It's at about $209,000 for placement on the table. So that is just to convert you over to the new table itself. The salary projection file anticipated us to spend about 7.4 million. This might have shifted a little too. The new chart is anticipated to be about 7.6. The placement on the scale did not adjust the table. We talked about the shift of that firefighter, and it's because we moved that percentage down rather than moving it up. So this is a division of your current titles are the bright colored ones, and in black are the positions they were placed into. This is the current white column is what you max out on your current scale. The second column is where you will max on the proposed scale, and the third column is the increased earnings. Now, the firefighter first class is a little bit messy because I rolled the probationary and second class firefighters up into that, which is why that number is slightly elevated. I did not normalize the data. I just rolled it up.
What about an engineer with their paramedic?
I didn't have anyone slotted in that, so I couldn't do a comparison, but I can show it to you.
Okay.
It shows up later on.
Okay, because I know we have a few
We
firefighters
have
that
some
have
going
attained the
through.
role, but yeah.
I did my best with who I knew was going in, and the chief sent me a list of who was going through training right now. For the method of placement, I did place those employees at the paramedic level, but there's some I could have missed, and that's something I can easily, it's just, I had to start with the base point because it's really hard to track all your guys' certifications. There's a lot. So, okay so far? All right. Now, this is as you move through the steps. So I do this for this, it varies. The top is for your firefighter and your engineer ranks. From step 1 to 2 is 3%, and it stays 3% through step 4. From step 5 to 7, it's 2.5, and then it decreases down to 2% with step 12 at max. Now, your lead, so your field lead positions and your actual managers, their steps are front end heavy, just like the individual contributors, but they taper off to 1%. We ran an analysis of time in position in the department, and most people vacate their positions by that step 8. The longest sitting battalion chief has flowing locks behind you, and he was just over 10 years. Everyone else usually vacates that position prior to that. So we did take that into account. I considered building the scale so there were more steps for your individual contributors who don't want to move up, but it's just usually easier for everyone to understand if your steps are level, so that's why we set on 12. 10's not enough, 15's too many.
I have a quick question. On step 12, it says max. Is there a percentage increase from 11 to 12?
Yeah, it's the 1% and the 2%. Little arrow.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna go through how I calculated between the ranks. And I know you guys are like, show me the scale, but when I show you the scale, you're gonna stop listening. So I wanna make sure you understand how I built it first.
I think you already said this, but are you gonna give us copies of this presentation when we're done?
I have a paper copy ready,
Okay.
and it's in 2 sections, because at some point you might say, we need a break to process the amount of data you just threw at me before I keep going. Because
I
I'm
definitely
going
can't
to
keep up
keep
on
going. I think I'm past my first break point, if you'd like it, but I'm not to the second yet. All right, so firefighter to engineer is a little easier. So we took the engineer is your FF3 because the firefighter with paramedic took up that second pay grade. We took it off of step 2, not step 1, because again, we're saying that first year is your probationary year, so we didn't want to use that as the starting point of the engineer pay. So we used step 2. I then had to build in another book. So that's why the calculation is this long. So it will be back down to a simple percentage. So it's 10% over step 2 plus the book amount, taking it to 2176, starting the engineer position at 63,000. If you have your paramedic on that, it would start at 69,000. Now, engineer to lieutenant. It's always great to throw a new rank in there because then I have to figure out how to place the sucker. So we took step 1 of the engineer with paramedic and increased it by 5%. That means your paramedic, was your lieutenant, so your clinical expert on the paramedics, would start out at 73,000. That's $25.14 an hour. Fire marshal, I briefly mentioned this. I took the annual wages of the engineer and captain, added them together, increased them by 2%, divided that by 2, and then that gave me a new annual rate, and I divided that by 2080 to get the starting wage of $33.41, taking that pay to $69,000. Now, I'm giving you annuals so you don't have to sit and try to do math off of what you're used to doing for biweekly. The controlling number in all of this is the hourly rate of pay. We run into the problem when you're in Excel and then you go to the finance system, the math doesn't always match because of rounding. So the controlling number will be the hourly. That annual is going to fluctuate by $2 or $3 from what I'm presenting to what goes in the system, just because it calculates off hourly. Some people get really upset on that, so I'm just trying to be very clear. That's a representation. The hourly is the accurate number. Engineer to captain, we took step 1, we added 13%, and then we added 2% to basically build in the captain to BC, putting a WOOC in place there. And then I will eliminate that 2% back out and just move that to a flat 15. Days captain, I have that this is a limited position. We took the captain times the 2912 times the 9.2 and then divided it backwards into an hourly rate of pay for a 2080. Okay, so the paramedic stipend calculation, we talked about, it's that little white box. The paramedic stipend calculation, here it is, it decreases as you move up in rank. And just as a note, the lieutenant position does have to be a paramedic. I thought that was pretty self-explanatory, but I didn't want to misrepresent. It concerns me when none of you are talking or writing.
I've been right.
All right, so this goes through the minimum and maximums of each pay grade. Even if we don't have people assigned in it, it's just so you can see. So you have 42 people in the firefighter, you have 15 in the engineer, 3 in lieutenant, 1 in quasi 1 in fire marshal, 15 in captain, 3 in your BC, and then this is the other quasi. 1 head count fills those 2 ranks because we'll only have 1 active at a time.
Can you go back 2 slides and go back through those a little bit slower? Thank you.
Thank you.
So there is the table. I'm gonna hand it to you in paper because I know you all just blinked at me like you don't expect me to read that, right? So it's the last page on this. There's 2 handouts. I also have it in a wider spreadsheet. So the large one Jared's about to hand out has an hourly on top, which will be the controlling item. And then on the bottom, it also lists the annual per step, just so it gives you an idea. In the off chance, and it could have happened, that one of my numbers on the PowerPoint is wrong, it is this table that I would say controls. I'm gonna imagine you would like to caucus at this time. And I imagine I'll see you in several hours. Unless you have any questions off the top.
I do, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Initially, I mean, this is a bundle, obviously.
Uh-huh.
I would just like, what parts of this are negotiable? And what to you would be a deal breaker for the bundle deal? I mean, obviously, we have the rank structure, you'd need the ranks in there. But aside from the numbers, and like GWI, is there anything else that would be a deal breaker for?
So that's a good question. Right now, I am not negotiating. I am negotiating how we pay people and the method in which we pay people.
Right.
I figure we'll have a knockdown drag out over adjustments to the table as a separate item.
Okay.
I need us to go bi-weekly. I need a table to start from, which is why I'm using 24's wages. And then there would be a third wonderful conversation on what we want to do with the table over the duration of the contract. So right now, we're talking about the table and the structure.
So just to be clear, this is based on the 24
Everything's
numbers.
built off of the 24 numbers. They're not gonna match exactly. So,
Is fire marshal considered a rank below captain then, because it's paid lower? Because a lot of
It-
times we have captains take that position.
and that's part of what I'm struggling with is it's a different rank. How that sits in rank, I don't know if that's a flat thing, if that's one above and below. I have to number them something. It's really hard to compare what we do now, and you should have watched the assistant chiefs because they weren't involved in the creation. They got to be my guinea pigs and suffer through this presentation like 20 times.
So if a captain was to take the fire marshal position, would they go in at they'd go in at a higher grade or a higher
I
step?
don't know, and that's one thing that we need to have a discussion on. Some of these I can make educated guesses at. Some of these I just do not have the working knowledge to address.
Yeah.
It is a separate rank. How that rank sits, I don't know. That's something we need to have a conversation about. I can tell you how I structured the pay. I can't tell you how that fits within our actual rank structure. I guess
Yeah.
that's a little bit beyond my capability of festering out.
Yeah, at a lower rank and a lower pay, it's gonna be really hard to fill fire marshal with any captain.
And again,
And a little history, we had part of
I know.
it years ago, but it didn't work out, so.
And Curtis, if you could sit at the table, if you're gonna talk so the microphones pick you up.
So
And then can you introduce yourself for Marisa?
I'm Curtis Smith, retired.
He's so happy when he says it.
So we had fire marshals about 30 years ago. And they were a separate rank structure. They were slotted. almost identical to what we have here in that same position in between the drivers and the captains. It became a problem to fill it. And so we moved away from the fire marshal to make it more appealing for individuals to go for and to make it, so there was a path. The problem is it became a dead-end position. You got into the fire marshal's position, you were kind of stuck there. You couldn't get out, you were left in there. And so that's why we went back to the captain position for fire marshals. So it was more appealing, more people applied for it. You could then lateral out of that. So it wasn't, if you took that position, you were stuck there. So I'm not saying it's good or bad, just a little history on the fire marshal position. We had it, it just didn't work. But just
The problem is the current job description and function, there is no job description. It does not fit within the job description that exists. It doesn't work. When you look at it from a risk standpoint and to explain the position, we have nothing in writing that explains what that job really does. So this is the current hourly pay. You don't have that on yours because I didn't have a plotter to print pay scales for you. So this is the current hourly wage of those positions as I broke them down. As you see, paramedic is not included because that is not a rank that exists within this scale.
We have a few firefighter paramedics who have taken the promotion to engineer, but are still operating in that pointed position.
Again, the pay grade exists. I just don't have anyone slotted in there right now.
Oh, okay. I was just making sure that they would be applied to the engineer
As long as
position.
they are an engineer.
Okay.
They have to be operating as an engineer. If you had a one-day step up into it, that doesn't count. You have to hold the rank.
But if they have achieved the promotion,
there's only 15 slotted.
It's only the 15
And so
slotted.
you'd have to wait for, so just
Yeah,
because
wait
you've
for a
taken a
position.
day, you have to
That
wait
is-
for it open.
right? Okay,
One
but you wouldn't lose
downside of this.
those guys that we have would lose the. They would still have the ability to go
So let-
into that once available.
So we know if we go this route, the next actual promotional for a driver operator could be a decade from now. From the people who stepped into that role for a day or two to hold the rank and then reverted back into paramedic, for example. We're aware of that, but they will not be paid as a driver
Okay.
unless they are an active, actual driver, which is the 15 we have now. We know that is gonna be a mess. We've already earmarked that as a headache.
And that would be the expectation was that when the spot's open, they'd go into that spot.
The expectation is we would revert back to, they would have the ability based on, I believe, a hierarchy. The first person would be offered that spot.
I think Eric just asked this, but just so I'm clear. This table here, is this a what if for FY '24 or is this a proposed FY '25?
That is a proposed 25, that is my 25.
So this is, okay, so FY '25
Because
and
it's expensive to build it without even doing anything to it. And then I still have your civilians on top of this, which is a separate issue.
do you have any proposed table increases between?
Right
25,
now,
26,
I'm not
27?
talking about the upcoming fiscal years, I'm only talking about the table. I already have 19 things on the table no one's wanting to talk about, and then I just threw this big shiny carrot that, sorry, my other 19, I'm gonna cleave to this gleefully, because I still need to address those. Table adjustment has to come after the table creation. And the creation is the very, very hard, stressful, hopefully not insulting part. I assume you would like to caucus at this time.
I have a question I was hoping to get addressed. Could you pull your slideshow back up?
Mhm.
And it was a slide or two before your, where you had the percentage between steps.
A step or two before that?
Yeah, that one right there.
Oh, okay.
Can you explain the difference between, at the bottom you have firefighter first class, firefighter with paramedic, and then right above it you have firefighter with paramedic with differing. Is that just the difference of what it is on our current? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so some of the people who I slotted into paramedic currently don't have paramedic pay because they're going through training and they're not in that position. So their salary threshold is lower. So that number is skewed because I have, second class firefighters I'm slotting as a second class, but it took their average.
Okay.
Because I had to collapse those three ranks into one and people are still moving, so it skewed the numbers. And these numbers reflect a placement on the chart. If they're going through training and they don't pass, I would obviously adjust that back down. But to calculate costs, everyone bumped up, but they could still be a second class, and that doesn't exist. So that's why there's a numbers difference.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the lieutenant spot? I think you said that the three most senior would just
So-
move into that, or would,
The problem we run into whenever we create something new like that, it's like the chicken or the egg, what comes first, right? So the city's proposal for that is we would slot the three most tenured people in there right now until we have the promotional process. It would be a temporary assignment for these three people. Once the promotional process goes, then those three people would step into those ranks, and the people we had temporary assigned would revert back to the firefighter with paramedic. But I have to start someone there, so that's how we propose to do it.
Will this person's job function be any different on a day-to-day basis?
And that's something we're still defining, and we need help with that. So that's gonna be a very long conversation here at these tables as we try to hack that out. We wouldn't try to build that without input. It's just, I have to have experts and field staff that would interact with the position at different levels, help us phrase that correctly. But we did do the placement. It would be temporary until the promotional process. Because we now have more ranks, we're wondering if we need to split the promotional processes between years, so we're not doing them all in one in case people want to try for different positions. They're not prepping for two. So that's another thing we'll need to consider if we go make it through this table together.
do you have a staffing level model for like who's expected to work? I mean, since there's no defined paramedic anymore, right now we have paramedics work exclusively the ambulance, but mostly who would be expected to work when on the ambulance? I guess I don't know how to word that, but you know what I'm saying.
I do, and I don't have the right answer for that. That I'm gonna need the chief here for, and that's a conversation that isn't necessarily gonna be part of the CBA, it's gonna be part of operations. I don't think it's appropriate to find it in CBA, because the number of paramedics we may have at different times is going to shift as people come in and out of the department and receive training. So I think that's better left as an SOG, as an operational function. I can wade in there, but I'm not gonna be much help.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you had an idea. Because, you know, currently like a BC or even a captain are hardly ever on the ambulance because they're running on the station. On
They
their
are,
ambulance.
and that's.
So I don't know
why-
what the expectation would
That's
be
why
for them
their
to be on the
percentage is
ambulance.
so much less. We still want that expertise, we still want them to maintain that training, but we don't expect them to be nearly as frequently operating in that role. We're paying for the knowledge and the application of the knowledge more than we are for the work of it.
Any other points of discussion?
I'm sure we'll have some.
Oh, I'm sure you'll come
Give us an
back.
hour, we'll have our time.
We'll take a coffee break. Thank you.
Throw nothing down.
All right. So before we get going too far into some of the questions that we have a couple things that we could potentially take care of as far as your other proposals go. We will start with number 14. We didn't print that one out because
I have it.
we would just like to TA this one.
Jury duty and subpoenas.
Yep. And then we have a counter proposal for your proposal number 15, which is the Kelly Day
The multi-part.
vacation one.
You guys just want 3?
Yeah.
Wait till you get that.
Yeah, please.
I have two things on it. The first one was a clarifying question for you, and we were wanting to know what the intent would be for people that are carrying Kelly time right now, when they would, what would happen to that and when would that occur?
So we would handle Kelly Days for the duration of this calendar year as it exists, but we wouldn't, because we grant in January, right?
Correct.
So they would have through December to use, and they would roll into their vacation this year only, and then they would just see vacation.
And then
We
going
would-
forward, it would be
yeah.
this.
The vacation increase would happen in October, because we've already granted Kelly for the year.
Okay,
So they would carry those, and
Till
then
January.
we would convert
Okay.
for the last time, hopefully.
okay. Very good. Part number 2, we would just like to eliminate section G, the historical reference.
Okay? I just don't want
just it-
Kelly Days to come back again.
Understood.
Once I get rid of them, I don't want them to come back.
We just felt like this was kind of
That's-
just excess fluff.
It's easy.
Is all. So that's all we
You
would.
don't like my, do you know how much work that was?
I mean, the problem is
appreciate
there's
it.
I had to
there's no
Google the-
We
colors.
just don't want
And so we were stuck back in a room that didn't have any windows, so we didn't like that didn't have colors.
Yes, no problem.
So is that all you changed?
That is
in
it.
The city proposal 15
Correct.
is striking section G.
Correct.
Just want to make sure I understood.
Because I have it, I will share it. This is just. Have to place that. That was for precise count, that's this count. This is just a cost sheet. I'm gonna yell at me 'cause I'm sitting down. This is the cost sheet that shows that what the cost increase on 5.5 is, just because we both proposed it. I told you I would bring a cost sheet for the proposals, and this is just it, so you have it.
Is that for the
Holiday. Which one was it, sorry?
Okay. So moving on, we had some questions that we would like to ask you about your presentation that you did. Clarification question first. So if we move from biweekly to hourly, our paychecks will fluctuate. Is that correct?
That is accurate.
Okay. Some of the concerns that we were kind of talking about with that fire marshal position is if we are using, if we hire laterally into that position, is that person able to move out of the position into another position in like the process
They
that
would
would have
go
to
through the
occur?
same promotional process as everybody else.
Okay, so they,
So that one's a hard one, and we've gone back and forth on it from the city side too, and I don't honestly know if it's the right direction. I just wanted to give you some of why we proposed it. And it was my idea. With employees entering the workforce right now, many of them do not have any aspirations of being a personnel manager. In the fire department, once you go past driver operator, your only ability to promote is into positions that manage people. With the addition of the lieutenant, and then if we added the fire marshal, they could still be high-performing individual contributors and have job growth, but not manage people. If we revert that back to a captain with an actual job description that fits the function of what it does, it's a captain. It is a captain, but it isn't a captain because it doesn't oversee people. I'm just trying to bridge some of that generational gap for people that don't want to manage. And this is not a do or die for the city. This is just, if we're looking at it, let's look at it.
okay. And so I think one of our other concerns with that position is if a captain wanted to move into that position, I guess how he would fall on the pay scale.
So that we could negotiate so I would say that just from my understanding of it, it would be below it in rank. That is one we could look at, is if a captain wanted to move over, we could handle more of that as a lateral than we would as a demotion. And that's language we can work through together once we kind of figure out what we want it to look like. I'm not trying to do a be-all, end-all, and here I'm gonna serve this up to you. There's gotta be a lot of give and take as we figure out what works. And if you guys are not interested in the fire marshal side, that's fine. We can just kind of, that's one thing we can kind of push to the side. That's just where we came from, but it would be a promotion into a captain from it. I would consider it, we could look at lateral. I mean, we don't have to count it as a demotion for a captain who wants to move over. We have opportunities to build language to fit the need of the department.
Okay. Yes, sir.
One of the questions we had also was, how do we handle the civil service aspect of it if we do lateral? Because all of our rule of 80 personnel are civil service hires, and we've addressed it with the civilian fire inspector, that if we're going to hire a rule of 80, they have to come from the civil service list. Was that thought about?
And we would have to do that as part of the application process. It would have to be built in. Not too squirreless, but just because we brought it up, not this year, because there's enough on our plate this year. Is civil service the long-term direction the fire union wants to stay with, or would we like to build a different process? Just throw that in your mind. I'm not tackling that this year. If we were to have to go to there's enough on my plate. If we were to go to a lateral transfer in, we would have to build criteria that fit within civil service hiring for people to apply into that position.
And so that would be done through the civil service.
That is correct. We would have to create other language that we would have to amend our civil service rules, and we're aware of that.
So just a thought of the civil service rules. One reason we've always fought to hold on to them is in the event our beloved legislature was ever to do away with collective bargaining and we could no longer have contracts, at least under the civil service, we still have some protections. Our promotional language is in there. So it's hard for us to think about moving away because we never know what's going to happen with the legislature and what they might do. But if, as long as we at least keep those rules in place, there are some protections for promotions, discipline, things of that nature. So just food for thought, not now.
And
but
it's
moving.
just, it's kind of clunky. We moved away from it police and we built personnel administration rules that we have in place for the city. It's not a do or die, it's again, just a conversation. We're trying to have more of those. So yes, we have considered that. It would have to fall within the classifications. We would have to amend civil service language. All those steps would have to happen.
And is that feasible to do in the time frame?
Well, it is until Dean, I think, would vacate the position.
Okay.
We could build the position into the grade, have the job description ready, and then work on the civil service portion. And hopefully, and I'm pretty like 99.9% sure that would be ready before Dean were to step out of that role.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not an instant click for us. There's bandwidth we need to get that built.
Okay. All right. And then one of the questions we had about the lieutenant position is what we would like to see is a promotional process held before we fill that position.
And I can't have a CBA in place and not, so if we create it, I have to fill it. And I can't run a promotional process outside of a CBA because then I would have to amend the current one. So I'm not sure how we do that, which is where I thought the temporary assignment for the 3 people. And then we would have the promotional process defined and then they would move out of that temporary assignment. But I don't know how we do that between juggling 2 CBAs because we're currently in an active one. The new one doesn't start till October. I need that head count in October because we moved to the stipend. So I'm not sure, and that's definitely a conversation. It's awkward. It's the chicken or the egg, like I said. And right now I just picked a chicken.
So our concern with that, and we understand where you're coming from. Our concern would be someone is just thrown into a new job title that they may not necessarily want. So I guess one thought that we had would be that the job title of the lieutenant would just be exactly that of a paramedic for now until we get it built out to what it's going to look like a year from now and then have a promotional process. So I guess what I'm saying is the assignments that are given to that person are going to be up to the acting battalion chief.
I would rather have the position vacant than come up with a whole other pay grade and a whole other, because the contract has to reflect what we have. So I'd have to have a paramedic in the contract and then I'd have to have a trigger date for the lieutenant. I'd rather leave it vacant and we can build that language in until a promotional process is completed than have to have another working job title in there that's gonna go away.
So we can leave it vacant then?
We
till-
could if we agreed upon that.
Oh, okay.
It's just, that's always awkward
And yeah,
to have
and,
positions we're not.
yeah, our big concern was just
I know,
throwing
it's
somebody in
just
there
awkward.
and being like, look, now you gotta do, you
Well,
know,
and
you gotta
part
do
of
all this
that is
stuff.
we were
and-
looking at the tenured people, so maybe they could give us some feedback on, you know, if we draft language in SOG, how that works, and if it's not working, we could have someone actively giving feedback. And it's a flex there, but I would prefer not to have a paramedic that then I have to get rid of. I'd rather us build language that says this will remain vacant until a promotional process is completed.
And that's kind of our preference too,
Yeah, I
just,
think-
just so that we can get the right person for,
It's hard,
The job
and it's
description.
hard when you add something like that,
Yeah.
because it is from the ground up.
yeah, we do. Yeah. You guys have any more questions on that one or any more thoughts? Okay. And then one thing, I mean, and obviously a lot of this stuff is gonna have to be built out into contract language and, you know,
Oh,
if we like the plan, then we're gonna have a lot of work to do.
The whole contract is gonna have to be reviewed line by
Yeah.
line to take
So-
out any references and calculations.
And so some of our questions are kind of gonna be, right now, are kind of geared towards that change, right? One thing that we just wanted to put on your radar is, when does the paramedic stipend take place for the individual? Does it take place when they get their state license? Like, when would they start to receive that stipend?
So they would have to have a license.
Yeah.
In good standing, renewed, all of that. Active in the fire department. I would say the next pay period after they receive it.
Okay, so we're basing it off of their licensure.
Yeah. The first year is gonna be a little hard as we try to figure out how to budget for people going through training. Right now, I know we have a ton in training, and going forward, we'll have to work with the chief and build that in as kind of a pool with the training budget to cover the people getting into that.
Okay,
But it wouldn't be an annual thing.
okay. Did I forget anything, fellas?
There was going from like a step firefighter into the next paramedic.
Oh, okay, yeah, I did for
Yeah.
that, got lost. So, just for clarification, the firefighter, what are we calling it?
Any position, I guess.
The steps?
The grade.
Okay,
So if you're in the firefighter grade,
yep.
and then you get your state license,
Mhm.
and so then you would start to receive your stipend. Are you just mirroring down a step?
Yep.
Okay.
So
And that is the same for every
Yep.
rank?
So a step 3 captain,
Becomes a step 3 captain.
step
of
3
paramedic.
captain, okay.
Okay.
It's
Doesn't-
still time and grade is
Yeah.
still applicable.
Doesn't fall
You're
back
not
to the-
starting
okay,
over,
okay.
because it's the same rank, so
And
you
that's
think
what,
of it
and that's
that
what
way.
we thought. We just wanted to make sure that we were
Yeah.
all on the same page with it.
I don't want to try to administer that.
Okay. So the stipend is the stipend. You're just gonna mirror
Yeah,
it
you
now.
just
Okay.
move to the new grade at your current step.
Okay. Did I miss?
Maybe.
I'm sure. Those were the big ones.
I have a couple housekeeping things too, once you've made it through your hopefully not too long of list.
That's it
Okay.
for now.
So I promised you that I would run cost analysis on your other requests, so I have done that. So this is not a proposal. This is just a sharing of information. So the top one is the cost analysis of your proposal 3, which was an increase to MERT. The increase of that is $182,000. And then the second one in green is union proposal 4, which was an increase to your HRA. That's an increase of $130,000. So I just have that. And I promised to share information as I had it, so there it
Okay.
is.
I did have one more.
One
thing.
more.
Sorry. it
That's
brought
okay.
to my attention.
That's why we're here.
So we're gonna have to go back and communicate this to our membership and receive buy-in. One of the things that could potentially help is if we had a breakdown of what people's, where they would fall.
So this
on
is it.
On the step. Are you willing to share that with us?
So,
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, let me get my magnifying glass
So,
out. Maybe a
I'm not gonna
telescope.
blow it up because I want to explain how I built it.
Okay.
And I can generate something, and this is all tentative based on,
Based on what we agree.
Sure.
and you have to remember, I'm working off of a salary projection file that's a snapshot in time.
Right.
So I can generate this into a per person explanation, or I can do it by rank. How would you like me to generate that?
Per person.
Okay, I can do that during, our caucus and have it when we come back.
Yeah,
That's
that would
fine.
be,
Because looking at it like this is as bad as you think.
yeah.
A lot of color.
Well, it's broken down by rank
So
right now.
I think that I can say that we like this plan. We had some good positive discussion about it, and want to continue to move forward with it.
I think it's a good move for us. I've put a lot of time into it, so I really hope it just doesn't die, because it's gonna be like, oh, it just died. But I will break this down by person. I planned on doing that if you were interested in the table, with the caveat that obviously I'm gonna have a few errors in there.
Sure.
The rank advancements I've tried to catch, but if I've missed anything, we can, like, I caught paramedic pay that was actually wrong in the projection file yesterday, and that screwed all my numbers. So it's pretty close.
Okay.
Do you want to see an example of one?
Sure. Sure.
Would that help?
Yeah.
Okay, what rank do you want me to do?
Let's do firefighter.
Okay. So this is an example of your first class firefighters. And I'm gonna go with one in blue because I don't show that those people are going through paramedic training. This is their, what is that? Look, then I have longevity, then I have their annual wage. From there, I go to their annual total, divided into an hourly rate of pay. Good so far?
Yep.
Yeah.
I then assign them their new grade, which is a FF1, and this is their step placement. Now, I took their step placement by going over here, and this is what they will be making based on the step I have assigned. So as I change these, that number shifts. So I did it that way so I can ensure that no one is in a negative here. So this firefighter will be going to a step 2 from, they're a second class right now, so there's a promotional rank in there. Their increase will be 2864. And then this goes through what they have left to learn in longevity, what the max is they would receive now if they stayed in the rank, and what the max is at the new rank. I can break this down by person. And I can do it in a Word document in a mail merge in half an hour.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's,
Once I get it built, I'll walk you through it to make sure I didn't miss anything, and then I'll print them all.
Okay.
Would you be able to include a column that shows percent change?
I have one that's at the end. But it gets messy when you get to the end because I have ambulance county stuff in here. AE. I believe that's the percentage, but I'll double check it. But yes, it's in there.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Do you guys have anything else? Hearing none.
So
Marcus? Caucus.
So I'll have lunch at 1. I'll let you know when it's here.
Okay. Yeah, I think
And I'll work
I think
on
we're in a caucus and work
The
on some stuff.
breakdown. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
So, we want to ask you, see if you guys have any counters on the proposals that we gave you.
The two? No.
Okay. So we have a counter to one of yours.
I kind of got to see what I'm spending before I start spending more.
Sure. Thank you.
Here, you can have two.
Oh, thank you.
We did not label this as a counter proposal, unfortunately, before we printed it. So this is a counter proposal to number 19. We struck the language in section 1. I just screwed myself up here. You're saying something? Okay. And we added some language there. For October through December 24, the city will pay the actual premium. For the remainder of 2025, the city will pay up to an 8% increase. So we wanted to go back up to our original number for that increase. We felt like 8% was a pretty fair number on that. Over the 2024 rates, or the actual premium, whichever is less, based on the type of individual enrollments. And we changed the scale down, or the graph down there to reflect that. And then we added 8% to 2, 3, and 4 for fiscal year 26, 27, and 28.
Okay.
And then we struck the city covered rates on there to reflect just 2025 rates through number 2, 3, and 4. Continuing on.
Just, I have a point of clarification.
Sure.
You said you struck city covered rates. So at the beginning of each fiscal year, if your rate's gone up, what is our base point now?
It'll be the total premium for the prior year.
Okay.
And so we took a few notes from you and we kind of threw this together in a bundle. First part of that is adopt the healthcare proposal as written above. And then we added a section down, or sorry, we changed section C and we struck sole responsibility. And we added, as well as payroll deduction for any premiums for an increase over the agreed limit. Below that, on number 3, we are addressing the city's proposal number 7, which had to do with that $1,500 of recreational money, and we will surrender that in lieu of the language change in section, or the language added in section C. As part of this, we will retract our proposal number 4 for the VIBA money increase. And then we would like to amend proposal number 3, which is the MERP increase. And we would like to propose a $25 increase in the fiscal year 25, and then an additional 25% in 26, and an additional 25% in 27. And then in 28, that would be the 150.
Okay.
28. And that is our counter proposal.
I understand it is written.
Okay.
Just a clarification, you don't mean percentages, you mean the dollar amount that's listed in number 5 there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Let me pull my notes here. I put them on my computer so I didn't have to worry about leaving them. Were you able to get that Word document with the individual increases?
So I got everything but the stupid percentages, so we hand wrote those in because I couldn't get the mail merged and put it in as a percentage. So it's It's in no real logical order. It's by rank,
Okay,
and then, I don't know how I had it sorted in my printer. So that's every category we use to calculate. It gives the employee name and their current title. It goes through all of their fiscal year 25 pays as established in salary projections, and then it converts it to an hourly. It explains this is not binding, this is a draft. The there's draft, really big letters. And then it shows their earnings compared to what their earnings could be.
okay, thank you.
The only thing that wouldn't print is the stupid percentages, so they're handwritten in, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for doing that.
At one point, I'm just like, I'm writing them because it's gonna be faster.
Okay. So I think from here, we kind of wanted to see how we should proceed with the wage plan. So we like the concept of the wage plan, and we just need to see what needs to happen from here as far as what we can work on for next session. And one of our requests is, we're wondering if maybe you have an idea of where you want the fire marshal to be and kind of how you want that plan to work.
When you say to be,
Or-
give me a little bit broader definition.
Like, do you have a job description started for them?
Yes. And I'm
perhaps-
bringing those to the next meeting.
Okay.
Because Stephanie's in there
assumed
fighting with
that.
her computer, and
Do you have one for the lieutenant position as well?
I believe we have a very rough draft of that one.
Okay.
So, yeah,
We just wanted to,
Starting.
yeah, we just wanted like a jump
We're gonna
off
bring those at the
point.
next session, but I
Okay.
do have the shortest proposal with the most amount of things I've ever written to kind of memorialize what we talked about today, just so it's kind of detailed out.
Okay,
Obviously, the CBA corrections around these 17 bullet points is massive. It just,
Sure.
there was no way to address it until we've had good, healthy discussion. So this is kind of bullet points everything.
What number are we on, do you know?
I think this is 20? Yeah. I have a non-member proposal, Lisa. So the PowerPoint was kind of 20, so I guess this is what,
20A.
20A? 20A.
Okay, so this is just the proposal for the slideshow.
That's basically the slideshow and bullet point.
okay,
With some of the changes we talked about here at the table are reflected in the bullet points.
okay,
The letters reflect those changes as well. I dropped 3 people out of lieutenant rank and dropped them back to firefighter with paramedics.
okay.
So we would like to revisit our original 11, which is the overtime worked must be, for a third party, must be taken as overtime and they can't be mixed. Last time you said you had a counter proposal, but I clarified what finance said, so I just wanted to follow up where we were at on that one.
That was the splitting of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or is this, you think we're okay? I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
11.
Okay,
I thought we
think
had one drafted.
we did, but it just had the language change in it that Heather clarified for us. That was all we did to theirs.
Okay. So we
Is that 11? Which one is that?
countered this one and agreed that this is kind
We
of.
agreed that that's, yeah. So, do we want to, I mean, we added that into theirs? Because this is theirs, right?
This is the one that we
That we, based off of what they gave us. So if we could, I guess we could look at that and I could just tell you one of the changes that we're gonna add just as a clarifying thing. And you can tell me what you think about that. Let me see if I can look at that. I'll just look at Eric's, since he's got it here. So under section B, we just added to the end of the very last sentence there, including backfill for set assignments. So that,
Anyone backfills, it has to be taken as Okay. so
Yeah,
it
just
can't
clarifying
Yeah.
that,
be The full cost recovery.
correct.
There was no, I don't think there's a change to the intent. We just wanted to make it
We just-
abundantly clear
No,
that.
but
That it
I'm
was
always
for-
happy to.
And we can
Right,
certainly
that's all.
give you a copy of that if you want, but I think it's safe to say that we can TA that. We just wanted to clarify so that our members knew backfill was included in that.
I've got a couple of here if you want.
Sure, yeah, and then we can just bring out some more for you.
That's okay. I'm not worried about it. Initial that.
Yeah. So on this one that we're gonna give you, our original proposal had not struck, so the employee may not combine overtime pay and compensatory time. We originally had struck the not. We're gonna
Initial
add
the
it.
not back in.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
And since we have a courier going between tables, we're willing to TA your counter 3 to our 15. We're also we can TA your counter to our 11. Any issue? Does that work? How about our original 13, which was on adding the sick leave language in FMLA?
So we are still working on that one.
Okay. How about 16 for the prescription meds through ADA? Have you even dug that deep yet?
No, we don't have,
I think that's all
Given you what we got.
I think,
TA.
yeah, I mean, you can go through the rest of them and we'll probably tell you the same thing,
Well,
but
we just highlighted a couple that felt low hanging.
Okay,
So we
yeah.
wanted to just try to knock some of
yeah,
these
we're
out.
trying to get through a
I
lot.
want less things on my spreadsheet here down into the
So do I,
done.
so do I.
So the next meeting, which is next Friday, we should have job descriptions.
Okay,
So they look a lot different. We've added physical requirements, we've added standardized equipment you regularly use. The section of actual duties, like the duties, has shifted very, very slightly. We've modernized a few things. They look very different, but they are not really different.
Okay.
But they don't look like they're on a typewriter anymore.
that's a plus.
It is a plus. Did you have any questions on the bilingual counter we handed over this morning?
Oh, man, that's been a long time ago.
I know, it was like a whole shift of your department ago.
Yeah.
You see why I tried to have?
Can you remind me the number on that one?
It was the city counter 1 to union counter 3 of bilingual.
You know, I don't know that
I just
we
wanted to
even,
see if you had any
We
questions.
didn't.
we did not
Okay,
have any.
so it would have been this one.
Yeah, we didn't.
Okay.
But we are trying to work through them. I just want you to know, rest assured.
So we'll have all of our new all of our new or all of our items at least discussed at the next meeting, even if we don't necessarily have the final drafts ready. Will you guys be ready for everything at the next meeting?
As far as proposals go, yes, we will.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right, well, I feel like I gave you enough to think about today.
Yeah, thanks.
Are you guys planning on bringing a paid proposal for our day staff?
Yes.
Okay, that'll be next week.
Yeah, I wanted to separate them because I think I gave you enough to chew on today without adding something else.
Okay.
I think that's it then. We'll see you next Friday morning.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.